Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The galaxy was wide, and its rulers even wider in their reach. Under the blood-red banner of the Interstellar Communist Party SCPU, humanity had conquered star systems, subjugated planets, and crushed rebellions with impunity. Earth, once the cradle of human civilization, was now just another cog in the machine of empire. Alien species became resources to be exploited. Their planets ravaged for mineral wealth, their cultures erased in the name of progress, but not everyone was blind to the atrocities. Daniel Grayson stood on a platform in one of Earth's bustling spaceports, his dark eyes scanning the crowd of supporters that had gathered for his speech. He could feel the weight of history on his shoulders. The people needed to hear the truth, but he knew the risk. He adjusted the microphone in front of him, cleared his throat, and took a deep breath. Citizens of Earth, Daniel's voice rang out strong and clear. We've been told for generations that the Interstellar Communist Party expanded across the stars for the good of humanity. That the alien planets we've taken were full of primitive savages, unworthy of the freedoms we cherish. But I stand before you today to tell you it's all a lie. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some people exchanged worried glances, while others nodded in agreement, their eyes burning with the same indignation that filled Daniel's heart. The CP isn't liberating these planets, they're enslaving them, they were bleeding them dry of resources, committing atrocities in our name, all while keeping us in the dark. Entire civilizations have been wiped out so that the elite can live in luxury. As the murmurs grew louder, Daniel could feel the tension mounting. He knew the danger he was in. Anyone who dared speak against the regime was marked. But this was bigger than him. It was bigger than any one person. If he didn't stand up, who would? I know what you're thinking. Daniel continued, how can one man fight an empire, but we don't have to fight alone? The truth is our weapon, and if enough of us stand up, they can't silence us all. Suddenly, a loud pop echoed from the back of the crowd. For a moment, Daniel thought it was a malfunction in the sound system, but then he saw the figure fall. His heart raced as chaos erupted. The crowd surged, pushing and shoving in every direction. Another shot rang out, and this time, Daniel dove behind the podium, his breath quick and shallow. You're here, a voice hissed next to him. Daniel turned to see Eva Lindstrom crouching beside him. The former SCP, the intelligence officer, had been lurking in the shadows for days, tracking his movement. Her face was hidden beneath a hood, but her cold blue eyes gleamed with an urgency that set Daniel on edge. Come with me if you want to live, she said, grabbing his arm. Daniel hesitated for a split second before nodding. The crowd had devolved into chaos, and he knew staying would only get him killed. He allowed Eva to lead him through a narrow alleyway that wound behind the spaceport. The sounds of gunfire and shouting faded into the distance as they moved deeper into the city's underbelly. Eva didn't say a word until they reached the safety of an abandoned building. She pushed Daniel inside, locking the door behind them. You're reckless, she said, her voice low but sharp. They'll kill you if you keep speaking out in the open like that. And what do you suggest I do? Stay silent. Daniel shot back, wiping sweat from his brow. People need to know the truth. They need to see what the SCP is doing to our galaxy. Eva sighed and leaned against the wall, crossing her arms. Tara, you're brave, Grayson, but bravery isn't enough. You need more than just words if you're going to bring them down. Daniel narrowed his eyes, unsure of where she was going with it. And what do you propose, your former SCP? Why are you even helping me? Because I know things, Unlagashida said quietly. I know things you don't, things that could destroy the SCP from the inside. Daniel stepped closer, his curiosity piqued. For you like what? Eva's eyes flickered with something darker, a shadow from her past that she couldn't T-shape. There's at a research facility, she said, lowering her voice, on a planet called Verizets, one of the outer colonies. The SCP uses it to experiment on alien species to strip their planets of resources. It's a graveyard of civilizations they've all wiped out, and the proof you need to expose them is there. Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. If what she said was true, then this was exactly the break he needed. But it was also incredibly dangerous. The SCP didn't tolerate traitors, and if they caught him, he wouldn't live long enough to see his truth come to light. And why should I trust you? Daniel asked, his voice hardening. Krier, for all I know, this could be a trap. Eva didn't flinch. She don't need to pinch funny, Frey, she said. Does she want to take down the ACP down to you? This is your chance. I can get you inside, but once we reach there, you will need to be prepared for what you find. It's worse than you can imagine. Daniel took a deep breath. His instinct screamed at him to be cautious, but something about Eva's demeanor told him she was sincere. This wasn't just about helping him. It was about redemption for her own sin. All right, Daniel said, finally, let's do it. Eva nodded, her expression unreadable. How we leave at dawn. The journey to Varus took them deep into the outer colonies, where few dared to venture without permission from the SM. The planet itself was a bleak, lifeless rock, scarred by years of resource extraction and exploitation. As their small craft descended through the thick, murky atmosphere, Daniel felt a knot tighten his stomach. This place looks like death, he muttered, gazing out at the barren landscape below. That's because it is. Ava replied, ETP didn't just strip the land, they exterminated the native species. We were standing on a mass grave. Daniel's heart sank as they touched down on the cracked surface. The air was heavy, thick with dust and the lingering stench of destruction. The sky overhead was a sickly yellow, and the once great forests of varishes had long since been reduced to nothing more than ash. Eva led the way, her movements cautious but deliberate. The facility was located beneath the surface, hidden from prying eyes. They had to navigate through a series of tunnels and checkpoints, each more heavily guarded than the last. Daniel's pulse quickened as they passed through, his hand resting on the blaster at his side. One wrong move, and they'd be caught. Finally, they reached the heart of the facility, a massive underground chamber filled with rows upon rows of containment units. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as he saw what was inside. The aliens weren't all just dead, they were being harvested. Their bodies had been mutilated, dissected, their organs extracted for use in the SpaceSci-Fi machine. Some were still alive, trapped in a state of perpetual agony as their vital functions were sustained by cruel machines. This is it, Eva whispered. This is what they were hiding. This is what they were doing in the name of progress. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. He had expected horrors, but nothing like this. The reality of it all hit him like a physical blow, and for a moment he felt his resolve waver. Could he really take on something this monstrous? Could he really bring down an empire that thrived on such evil? We have to expose this, Daniel said, his voice shaking. The galaxy needs to know. Eva nodded grimly. There's a data terminal in the next room. If we can download the files, we'll have all the evidence we need. But we have to be fast. This place is crawling with surveillance. And if they find us, Daniel didn't need her to finish the sentence. He knew what was at stake. Every second they spent here increased their chances of being caught, and the thought of what the SPP would do to them made his stomach churn. Still, he couldn't turn back now, not after seeing this. They moved swiftly, keeping to the shadows as they approached the control room. The sound of their footsteps was drowned out by the low hum of the machines keeping the alien prisoners alive, or barely alive in some cases. Daniel's hands were slick with sweat as he pulled out his blaster, ready for anything. The door to the control room slid open with a soft hiss, and they slipped inside. Eva went straight to the terminal, her fingers flying across the keys with practiced precision. Daniel kept his eyes on the door, heart racing. Every minute felt like an eternity. Finally, Ava let out a soft curse. Damn it, the files are encrypted. I need more time. How much more? Daniel whispered, glancing nervously down the hallway. He could almost hear the heavy boots of SCP soldiers approaching, even though the facility remained eerily quiet. Just a few more minutes. Ava replied, her voice strained. Here, this encryption is state-of-the-art. They didn't want anyone to get their hands on them. Daniel swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay calm. They had come too far to fail now. He tightened his grip on the blaster, ready for anything, but nothing could have prepared him for the sound that came next. A deep guttural growl echoed through the hallway. Daniel's blood ran cold. It wasn't the sound of soldiers. This was something else, something far worse. Eva froze, her eyes wide. What is it? Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He must have released it. Eva said, her face pale temperature. A creature from one of the alien species they've been experimenting on. A weapon. They don't keep it here unless they know someone's out trying to steal something important. The growl grew louder. Closer, Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. How do we stop it? We don't, Taylor said, her hands shaking as she continued working on the terminal. We run as soon as I get these files. We run. Daniel's cells quickened as the creature sense footsteps echoed down the corridor. It was close now, too close. He could hear the heavy breathing, the scrape of claws against metal. The creature let out another growl, louder this time, and Daniel could feel the vibrations in the floor beneath his feet. Got it, Leva exclaimed, yanking a data chip from the terminal. But before they could make a break for it, the creature appeared at the end of the hallway. It was massive, towering over them, its skin a mottled gray-green and its eyes glowing with a sickly yellow light. Its claws were razor-sharp, and its mouth was filled with rows of jagged teeth. Daniel raised his blaster, his hands trembling. But Eva grabbed his arm. Don, she hissed. That thing's designed to absorb energy. Blasters 1 heard it. Then, what the hell do we do? Daniel asked, panic creeping into his voice. Follow me, whispered, her eyes darting around the room. There's a way out through the maintenance tunnels, but we have to be fast. They backed away slowly, keeping their eyes on the creature. It sniffed the air, its head swiveling toward them. Daniel's heart hard pounded in his chest as they edged toward the door. The creature let out a low snarl, and for a moment, Daniel thought they were done for. Then, without warning, it charged. Eva grabbed Daniel's arm and yanked him through the door just as the creature's saws slashed through the space where they had been standing. They sprinted down the hallway, the creature, hot on their heel. Daniel says, lungs burned as they ran, the sound of the creature's footsteps thundering behind them. This way, Eva shouted, ducking into a side corridor. They rounded the corner, the creature crashing into the wall behind them, and bolted toward a hatch at the end of the hall. Eva slammed her fist against the panel, and the hatch slid open with a groan. They dove inside just as the creature lunged, its claws scraping against the metal as the hatch sealed shut. Daniel collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. An abomination, Eva said, her voice grim. Charles, the CPC, this idea of a perfect soldier. They take the strongest traits of the alien species they conquer and splice them together. What you just saw was the result. Jesus, Daniel muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. How many of those things are there? Too many, replied, her eyes dark, and they were using them to crush any planet that resists their rule. Daniel felt a surge of anger. But we have to get this out to the galaxy. People need to know what the ICP is doing. Evan nodded. We will, but first we have to get out of here alive. The maintenance tunnels were a maze of twisting passages and dead ends, but Eva seemed to know where she was going. They moved quickly, not daring to stop for too long. The creature's growls echoed faintly behind them, but it seemed they had managed to lose it for now. Once we were clear of this facility, we'll transmit the files to every resistance group in the galaxy, Eva said, as they hurried through the tunnel. It'll take time to reach everyone, but once the truth is out, the SCP-1 won't be able to hide anymore. And what happens then? Daniel asked, his voice tight with anxiety. Right, they'll come after us with everything they've got. Eva gave him a hard look. Let's say the price of revolution. Grayson, you wanted to take them down. This is how it started. They reached the exit, a small hatch at the far end of the tunnel that led to the surface. Eva glanced around, then gestured for Daniel to follow her. They climbed out into the barren landscape, the sky above them a dull gray. The air was thick with dust, but the oppressive atmosphere of the facility was behind them. Where's the ship? Daniel asked, scanning the horizon. Over there, Eva said, pointing to a small outcrop of rocks in the distance. They made a break for it, sprinting across the cracked ground. Daniel's legs felt like lead, his body screaming for rest. But he pushed himself forward. The ship was their only chance of escape. As they neared the outcrop, Daniel's comlink buzzed. He glanced at it, his heart sinking. It was a message from one of his contacts on Earth. SCP forces are mobilizing. They know what you're up to. Get out now. They're onto us, Daniel said breathlessly. We need to move. Eva, didn't he need to be told twice? They reached the ship and scrambled aboard, the engines roaring to life as the hatch sealed behind them. Daniel collapsed into the pilot seat, his fingers flying over the control. The ship lifted off the ground, and they shot into the sky just as the alarms began blaring from the facility below. That was too close, Daniel muttered, his heart still racing. Eva leaned back in her seat, her expression unreadable. Freakyard, it's not over yet. We've got the files, but getting them out to the galaxy won't be easy. DCP controls most of the communications networks. They'll need to find a way to broadcast the files without being intercepted. Daniel nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. Shiri will find a way. We have to. As the ship soared through the atmosphere, leaving the desolate planet of Varys behind, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The truth was out there now, but it would take more than just words to bring down the Empire. The fight for freedom had begun, and there was no turning back.